Good afternoon and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Today we are going to be discussing 4 cold cases that were solved unconventionally. But first, we have a sponsor, and it is this channel. Okay, it isn't really a sponsorship, but I have launched some merch. I had a lot of fun making the designs, so check it out in the description below and let me know in the comments if there's anything you think I should add. Let's get into it. Number 1. Zephany Nurse. This case is eerily similar to the Kamaya Mobley case that we have previously covered. It was around the same time. If you're interested, I will link that in the description box. April 28, 1997, in Cape Town, South Africa, Celeste Nurse gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She had given birth by cesarean section and was recovering in hospital. The baby girl was named Zephany Nurse. Celeste was a first-time mother, but she was also very young. She had gotten used to nurses floating in and out of her hospital room. It was 3 days after she'd given birth when she began to fall asleep. A nurse was in her room with her and was comforting her as she drifted off. She woke to a different nurse rousing her, urgently demanding to know where her baby was. She looked over at the cot beside her, which was empty. A frantic search of the hospital yielded the discovery of baby Zephany's baby nest, the swaddle she'd been in, a handbag, and a discarded pillow. Investigators concluded that the pillow had been used for someone to appear pregnant, as no one would look too closely at a pregnant woman in a maternity ward. During their investigation, they discovered other new moms who had strange and similar encounters with either a nurse or another expecting mother. One woman said that she had spoken to a nurse that matched Celeste's description. They had only had a brief conversation about motherhood, but the new mother thought that the woman was odd. Another said that she woke to a strange nurse she'd never seen before holding her newborn, and when she questioned her about it, the nurse said that the baby had been crying and she was comforting it. It seemed as though a woman had been hanging around the maternity ward for several days prior to Zephany's abduction, either as a nurse or as a pregnant woman, and was waiting for a perfect opportunity. Celeste's husband wasn't at the hospital with her while she was recovering. It was also midday on a Wednesday, and family wouldn't be visiting until later on in the day. Baby Zephany was never found. There had been many leads, and on more than one occasion, Celeste would be given hope by police that a child may have been found, but it was never Zephany. One child had even been a boy, which was infuriating to the Nurse family. Celeste and her husband Mornay went on to have 3 more children. Every year on April 28th, they would celebrate Zephany's birthday by doing press, always trying to keep Zephany in the public's consciousness. In 2014, the nurse's second daughter Cassidy headed off on her first day of high school. Cassidy immediately got bombarded by other classmates saying that she looked identical to another girl at the school. This girl was 4 years older and in her final year. Cassidy met and instantly made a strong connection with Michelle Solomon. Michelle would go on to say, "I almost felt like I knew her. It was so scary. I couldn't understand why I was feeling like this." The two grew very close and began spending a lot of time together. Even though there was a fairly large age gap, they seemed to have a lot in common. One day, the girls took a selfie together and showed their parents the strong likeness the girls shared. Michelle's family had been very dismissive of the photo, but Celeste and Mornay Nurse scrutinized the photo carefully. They requested Cassidy to ask Michelle a question: when was Michelle born? Michelle told Cassidy that she'd been born on April 30th, 1997, the day Zephany had been abducted. Nothing more was really said on the matter for several weeks, until Michelle was pulled from class and asked to submit a DNA test. Michelle was told that there had been a newborn abducted in 97 named Zephany Nurse. A social worker explained to Michelle that there was no record of her birth, and there was evidence to suggest that she might be this baby. The DNA results concluded that Michelle Solomon was the missing Zephany Nurse. After Cassidy had told Mornay and Celeste Michelle's birthday, Mornay had asked investigators to look into Michelle's birth records, where they discovered Michelle Solomon had none. Michelle was removed from the only home she had ever known. The woman she had known as her mother, Lavona Solomon, was arrested. The man she knew as her father, Michael Solomon, was also investigated. Lavona claimed she never stole Zephany. She said that she had been receiving fertility treatments from a woman named Sylvia, and this woman had given her a baby girl. This woman was never found, and Lavona had never told her husband or any other family member that baby Michelle had been adopted. Michael said that in 1997, Lavona had been pregnant and had come home with a baby on April 30th. Michael was released and never charged, as there was no evidence that he knew Michelle had been stolen as a baby. Lavona was charged and sentenced to 10 years in prison for kidnapping and fraudulently claiming to be the mother of a child. It is believed that Lavona had been pregnant, but miscarried at some point during her pregnancy and faked the remainder of her pregnancy until she came home with the baby. Zephany never connected with her birth family, and she still considers Lavona and Michael to be her parents. She now has 2 children of her own, and she visits Lavona in prison as often as she can. She continues to go by Michelle, although she doesn't mind if people call her Zephany. She had grown up only 5 kilometers from her birth family. Had she not met Cassidy, and the two hadn't become friends and taken that selfie, she may never have discovered the truth. Number 2. Thomas Wayne Grammer. On May 7, 2004, 36-year-old Thomas Wayne Grammer was attacked in his home. His wife, who was home with him at the time, said that at 3:15 a.m., 2 men and a woman entered their Lakeland, Florida home. She said that her husband argued with the people, then Grammer was shot several times. The suspects fled the apartment and Grammer passed of his injuries. His wife said that she didn't know why the intruders came into their home or who the people were, and the suspects weren't apprehended. In 2005, Florida began to circulate decks of playing cards that contained photos and information of cold case victims. The state circulated 85,000 decks to various prisons, featuring 52 different cold cases from Florida. The idea came from decks of cards featuring foreign fugitives that were circulated to U.S. troops after 2001. It wasn't long after the cards were distributed that police received their first tip. An inmate had recognized Grammer's case and asked to speak to investigators. The inmate gave them a suspect name of an acquaintance who had confessed to him his involvement in the slaying. Following that, 2 men, 29-year-old Jason Seawright and 33-year-old Reggie Williams, were arrested and charged with murder. The investigation revealed that Grammer had drugs in his home and Seawright had intended to rob Grammer. Seawright enlisted Williams and a woman Grammer trusted named Mary Ann Wimberly to help him. Wimberly knocked on the door, and when Grammer opened it for her, Grammer was ambushed. Seawright hadn't anticipated Grammer resisting. Seawright said that it had been Williams who was the one to fire the weapon, but Williams said it had been Seawright. Both men ended up being charged with first-degree murder and attempted robbery. Wimberly wasn't charged in her involvement. Grammer's father thanked investigators for bringing his son justice. Number 3. Edgar La Tulip. September 2, 1986, 21-year-old Edgar La Tulip boarded a bus from Kitchener, Ontario, Canada to Niagara Falls. Edgar had developmental delays. Although he was in his 20s, he had the mental capacity of a 12-year-old. He had also suffered from depression. He had been living in a group home at the time of his disappearance. His home in Kitchener was about 90 minutes away from Niagara Falls. Edgar had boarded the bus without luggage, and it was assumed he had plans to commit suicide, as he had many attempts in the past, but despite extensive searches of the area, his body was never located. Since a body was never recovered, police weren't able to rule out foul play. He simply vanished. Once he got off his bus, He wasn't seen again for 3 decades. Police in 2016 were shocked when they received a call from a social worker in St. Catharines, Ontario. The man had been living under an assumed name only 20 kilometers away from where Edgar had disappeared. The man had suffered a head injury in '86 and lost most of his memory. He had started to recover bits and pieces of memories that made him reach out to his social worker and tell him that he thought he might have had a different name before. The social worker Googled the name he gave them, and the social worker was surprised to discover Edgar La Tulip was a missing person. The man was interviewed by police and submitted a DNA test. The results confirmed that Edgar had, in some ways, found himself. Edgar, now in his 50s, had been living a low-profile life in St. Catharines with the new name he had been given since he had lost his memories. He was reunited with his family, including his mother, who was overwhelmed in Kitchener. The family had never given up hope that they may one day find Edgar. His mother did many interviews over the years to keep his cold case file alive. Kitchener police said that they had never had a missing person cold case solved with the missing person being found alive after so many years, ever. This is what Niagara Regional Police Constable Philip Gavin said in a statement. "I've been a police officer for 18 years, and this is something I've seen on TV but never been part of. Absolutely, this is quite rare." Number 4. Dawn Sanchez. On August 30th, 1991, 32-year-old Dawn Sanchez was seen getting into her boyfriend Bernardo Bass's vehicle and was never seen again. She was reported missing by her family the following October. Sanchez was a sex worker and had been working for a brothel in Nevada. Sanchez and her boyfriend were last seen leaving a motel in Los Altos, California. Her boyfriend was described as controlling, jealous, violent. Sanchez had told friends that she was afraid to be alone with him. A witness came forward in 1992, and he said that he had witnessed the two in a heated argument and reported hearing the sound of a gunshot. Bass was arrested and charged, but there wasn't enough evidence for a conviction and he was released. Bass's 1979 Pontiac Grand Prix had gone missing at the time of Sanchez's disappearance. Bass's sister had initially told investigators she had sold the car on behalf of her brother, but after Bass was charged and convicted for another crime, she said that she had been told by her brother to say that and that she had lied because she was scared of her brother. Investigators received a tip that the car may have been chopped and dumped in an abandoned lot in El Viso in San Francisco. The lot was filled with other vehicles and various metal debris, so the police reached out to the engineers from NASA and Carnegie Mellon University for help. They offered to use a robot that could use real-time processing algorithms and platforms for magnetic and ground-penetrating radar sensors hosted on small autonomous aerial and ground vehicles for intelligent autonomous Earth science missions. That's a mouthful. Basically meaning NASA was going to use a robot to scan, analyze the debris, and match it to the type of debris they were looking for, which was the car, and providing officers with a general area to excavate. This was the first time a technology like this was being used to solve a cold case. The robot was able to locate parts of the vehicle which contained enough evidence to convict Bernardo Bass for the kidnapping and murder of Dawn Sanchez. Well, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out until the end. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content, and subscribe for more if you haven't already. If you've done all that and you want to support me and the channel, I have linked a couple donation options in the box. Also a reminder of the merch that is also in the description box. I also wanted to do something new and do a subscriber shout out. From the last video, Stephanie87 said, "I cried and breathed a sigh of relief when they wheeled him off to jail. One less monster out there. I hope his victims are now able to breathe relief as well, and know we stand behind them in support." Thank you so much for your support, Stephanie. If you would like to be in the next featured shoutout, just be subscribed and comment your thoughts on this video. Thank you all for your support. I appreciate it greatly. Bye.